Hi, Miles. Welcome back. How was the holiday? It was an interesting holiday, is what it was. Good to see you, Pablo. How you doing? How you been? It was a very interesting holiday. A lot of things happened. The first week was absolutely shambolic, but the second week of the vacation is what I enjoyed the most. Evening, Miles of CMF Talk. Good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Evening, everyone. Joe, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Why is it early? Tor, good to see you. The reason why we're doing the live show at 10 p.m. and no longer at 11:30 p.m. is because I did a vote to see which time is better for everybody to join into the live. Is it better at 11:30? Is it better at 10 p.m. London time? And the majority vote was 10 p.m. So from now on, Monday to Friday, the CMF live show is going to be 10 p.m. London time. What's up, CMF? What's up, Miles? Kerry, good to see you. How you doing? How you been, brother? I'm liking the tan. Thank you, Kerry. Evening, Miles. And Pure, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? T, hello, Miles. Long time. How's it been this new time for the live? How's you been this time new for live? It was good. It was good. Welcome back, Miles. Good to see you. You have been missed. Artistic, thank you so much as well. Good to see you as well. How you doing? Good day, Miles. Happy to see you back. Mike, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles, and on CMF. JP, good to see you as well, brother. How you doing? How you been? It's good to be back, honestly. And a lot of things have happened since I've been on vacation this past 2 weeks. So many things have been happening in terms of essentially the world, in terms of, Iran and Israel's situation that's going on, or Russia-Ukraine situation is still carrying on, or essentially the US and China's trade deals that's been going on. And all of these situations have been impacting the stock market, the crypto market space, and a lot of geopolitical tensions essentially are going on right now. Yes, better time for me, Miles. Let's go, T. You look well, Miles. Thank you so much, T. So, a lot of things to cover on tonight's live. And before we start off the live, as always, welcome to the CMF Live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, the CMF Live stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. I host the live that you're watching right now. You can tune to this live Monday to Friday at 10 p.m. London time from now on. And this is episode 319 of the CMF Live. And in this live, I always talk about the most recent news happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrency, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much vital information for you to know about what's happening around the world and in terms of how close are we to this future, of this digital future we're going to be living into. And also the disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. And also we do Q&As on this live, which means if you ever do have any questions, put it back, essentially put your questions inside the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer the questions you may have. And I also go for everybody's comments. I don't leave anybody's questions out, or even if you have a statement to make, go for it. And also, I just want to take just 1 second to say thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who has already liked this live on X. If you're watching this from X, thank you so much to everyone who's liked this live on X, who's retweeted this live on X, put a comment outside the live. Hashtag the XRP Army, hashtag Trump, hashtag whoever you want to, or any project that you want to. And thanks so much to everyone on YouTube who's watching right now, who's also liked the live as well. If you haven't done that, CMF members, take 5 seconds to like the live and retweet it if you're watching on X. If you're watching on YouTube, just like the live. Now, before we go through the news, and there's a lot of news to cover on tonight's lives, too many things have been happening around the world. Let's go straight into the comment section and we go straight into the first news of tonight's live. But as I said, there's so much to cover on tonight's live. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Glad to see you, brother. SB, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Good to see you. Were greatly missed. Let's go, Denise. Thank you so much as well for the kind words. Good to see you as well. Good to see you. SB, Lena, good to see you, Miles. I hope you're well rested. I definitely am. Woodhouse, Lena, good to see you. How you doing? Woodhouse, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? Hi, Miles. Can you tell me why is war? Tell you why is war? Why is there war going on? Because the Iranian regime essentially is like cancer, and they start wars and essentially they fund illicit activities, and this is why Israel decided to take out their leaders. Essentially, is what's the reason of the war that's going on. Hi Miles, can you tell me when XRP go up in price? I hold a long time. I tried. When is XRP going to go up in price? XRP is not a short-term project. It's never been a short-term project. It's always been a long-term project, and even you can even say XRP is a lifetime project also. But it's going to go up in price very soon because this case between the SEC and essentially Ripple is coming to some sort of a conclusion. Hence why the price of XRP has been greatly up. Also, there's a massive wave of institutional wave. Essentially, you could say institutional wave that's happening towards XRP in terms of wallet activity, which we're going to go through on tonight's live as well. But just hold on tight is what I would say essentially. Sub lad, how you doing? How you been? AH, good to see you. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Nice to see you all. Bull XRP, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Evening, Miles and CMF. Semper, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Evening, Miles and CMF. Pierce, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Nice chain, Miles. Haven't noticed it before. Woodhouse, thank you so much for the kind words, brother. Now, the first news we're going to cover on tonight's live is a bit of a mixture of the crypto side and also the geopolitical tensions that are going on that affects the market space that we're in. So, the crypto surge has defied the global unrest, even though there's massive geopolitical tensions going on right now, especially in the Middle East. It seems like the crypto market space has recovered quite rapidly, you could say. In the past, the crypto market would have stayed volatile for quite a bit of a long time. But, you know, essentially, since all these institutions are inside the crypto space, these banks are inside the crypto space, we have regulations coming for the crypto space, we have ETFs inside the crypto space, ETPs inside the crypto space. So many things have been happening towards crypto space that this essentially situation with geopolitical tensions that are going on didn't affect the crypto market space that bad. It actually held up quite well. And it only impacted the market space, you could say, maybe 2 days, 3 days max. So here it is. With international tensions essentially on a high rise, Bitcoin is approaching a critical moment as it essentially nears a significant price threshold of $108,000, somewhere around that. Despite ongoing essentially geopolitical challenges marked by active conflicts, Bitcoin remains persistent, and so does the rest of the crypto space. The G7 summit could be a turning point for addressing tariff dilemmas, making these turbulent times crucial for cryptocurrencies and broader understanding of adoption. Also, the G7 summit that's happening, they're going to be discussing the situation between Israel and Iran, and essentially on the topic of removing this regime from Iran is what Israel wants, and it should be done in my opinion as well. But also on the topic of, you know, the Iran nuclear power situation. While uncertainties stemming from conflicts have pushed gold also to new records, gold as always has been seen and will continue to be seen as an actual safe haven. Bitcoin is also emerging as a formidable contender, sustaining its value in the six-figure range. Recognized essentially as a complementary essentially storage of value, Bitcoin gains appeal amidst the shadows of possible third world conflicts. The spectacular essentially potential underscores Bitcoin's unique scarcity, easy essentially storage, and robust security as a reason it may be more desirable of an asset as time goes by. Potential also contrasts essentially Bitcoin's limited 21 million cap with the potential for gold's future supply issues, suggesting essentially that a digital ecosystem grow and Bitcoin will become more attractive than traditional essentially options. He explains that Bitcoin's advantage over gold lies in its cost-effective protection and seamless also global transactions. And according essentially to other analysts and other reports that are coming out, fiat currencies are lacking in centric worth right now, contributing to the perpetual conflicts as governments essentially freely print more money. And he also views Bitcoin as a solution to the financial sustaining of wars, while Bitcoin sees challenges near $108,000 mark, aimed Iranian missiles, also activities that are going on, hinting at heightened volatility ahead. So even though this essentially Iran situation is going on with Israel, again, the crypto market space has, you could say, recovered up to a certain extent very fast. In this landscape, also, other analysts are offering their own insights as well. The Total 2 charts, which evaluates altcoins and the market value, forecasting a pivoting upswing, anticipating a rebound of the Total 2 is testing a dialogue resistance, signaling also an imminent surge. Altcoins are on the brink of a significant jump as Total 2 tests resistance poised for a breakout. The reason why altcoins are getting closer to some sort of a jump is because we're getting closer to rules and regulations. Rules and regulations will eventually equals to essentially utility, which is what a lot of altcoins bring to the table with all their contracts, their licensings, and so on. According to essentially analysts, as Bitcoin rises with gold marginally essentially retreating, conditions may support a risk-tolerant essentially market if metals like gold decline suddenly, which I don't think is going to be happening in any sort of a way. Bitcoin has, gold has always been seen as a safe haven, and I do believe continuing forward for decades to come, gold will always be seen as a safe haven. A drop below essentially $3,400 in gold could mark a favorable shift for investing in essentially other alternative assets. Also, in summary, key indicators align to hint at fluctuating conditions inside the crypto market space. Bitcoin's essential presence amidst political upheavals that are going on could signify a new opportunity, highlighting distinctive attributes when essentially conventional assets like gold maybe go through some sort of turbulence. As microeconomic essentially factors evolve, the behavior of digital assets might present a novel financial landscape. They're saying essentially also that because of the war scenarios that are going on, some countries may decide to use crypto assets as a form of payments rather than using fiat because it is faster and, essentially a lot more harder to trace. Not that it can't be traced, just a little bit harder. Now, moving on essentially from all the war scenarios that are happening right now in the world and geopolitical tensions that are rising, that is affecting some sort of market spaces, we're going to move on to Truth Social. Because Truth Social has decided to make a very bold move by applying for a Bitcoin and Ethereum essentially ETF. Now, there's also a lot of things that are coming out from Trump. Trump also today made the announcement that he's releasing a phone called Trump Phone. If anybody wants to go for that, it's about $499. But Truth Media today, also with the announcement of a new phone, made the announcement of a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. So here it is. Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social, officially submitted a filing with the US SEC today to launch a new ETF that will provide direct exposure to Bitcoin and Ethereum. This dual cryptocurrency ETF, named the Truth Social Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF, aims to offer essentially investors a streamlined way to invest into the largest assets through a single product. So one ETF, both Bitcoin and Ethereum are inside of it. Key details of the ETF filing: dual asset focus. The ETF will allocate approximately 75% of its assets to Bitcoin and 25% to Ethereum, with the possibility essentially for the sponsor to adjust this ratio in the future. Custody and management with Crypto.com through its affiliates. Forest Dax Trust Company will serve as the custodian, holding essentially the underlying crypto asset on behalf of the ETFs, which is strange because I would have thought, Coinbase would have been the chosen custodian in this matter, because Coinbase is the chosen custodian for the majority of ETFs inside the United States. But anyways, sponsorship. The ETF is sponsored by York Valley America Digital, which is also essentially involved in other digital assets and funds. Listing essentially venues. The proposed ETF aims to be listed in the New York Stock Exchange. Akara investment models. The fund will initially essentially operate on a cash-only creation and redemption model, with the potential to move in an in-kind transaction later on. This filing also marks a significant expansion of the Trump media's presence in the digital asset sector, following its recent standalone Bitcoin ETF registration and the multi-billion-dollar Bitcoin treasury deal approved by the SEC. The move is also seen as leveraging the Truth Social brand to attract traditional investors seeking diversified essential crypto exposure within the regulated framework that's happening inside the United States right now. If approved, the Truth Social Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs would join a growing list of crypto ETFs inside the United States, competing essentially with products from major asset managers like BlackRock, Grayscale, and Fidelity. The initiative also underscores the increasing inception of politics, social media, and digital finance intertwining together, as Truth Social becomes the first politically affiliated platform to pursue a dual crypto ETF. The SEC will review the application, and further details such as the ETF's ticker and cash custodian are expected to be finalized in the upcoming amendments, and market observers are watching closely, as approval could signal a broader acceptance and integration of cryptocurrencies into mainstream financial products. So Trump's Truth Social Media is essentially going for a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. A dual application essentially is what's being filed with the SEC. Is it going to be approved? Most likely yes, because it's a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. The SEC doesn't really objectify those two particular assets, even during essentially Gary Gensler's sway of being the the captain of the SEC. Now, moving on essentially from Truth Social to what's happening in Vietnam in terms of cryptocurrencies and regulations and tokenization. But before we talk about that, let's go to the comment section first, and then we go straight into the next news. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or comments to make, put it down to the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's go to the comment section first, and we go straight into the next news, which is regarding tokenization. We were at here. Pierce, evening, Miles, and CMF. Good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Nice chain, Miles. And just before, let's go. Do I like Star Wars? Not really a fan. If you are, good for you. Christ is Messiah. Let's go. Johnny, what is up? Robert, good to see you. How you doing? Maxwell, how you doing? Hi, Miles and CMF. Jason, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Welcome home, Miles. Let's go, Jason. Thank you so much, brother. Good evening, Miles and family. Good to see you again. Carlos, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Now, Vietnam. Vietnam apparently is getting very close to some sort of legalization of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and tokenization. They're doing a package token, essentially a package regulation, you could pretty much say. Vietnam's National Assembly has passed the law on digital technology industries, officially recognizing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. This legislative essentially move marks a pivotal shift in Vietnam's digital economy, aligning the country with global crypto hubs. Despite the lack of immediate on-chain impact, and significant market changes are expected by essentially January 2026. Now, also, if you're wondering to yourself, what impact could Vietnam really have inside the crypto market space? Well, they're actually bringing in quite a large amount of volume, you could say, par on par with Turkey. Turkey brings a lot of money to the table as well. We're talking billions towards the crypto space. Vietnam's recent legalization of cryptocurrencies, led by essentially the National Assembly, represents a landmark decision in the Southeast Asia market space. The law essentially on digital technology industries was passed on June 14, 2025. The key participants include essentially the Ministry of Finance and the State Bank of essentially Vietnam. Prompted by the Prime Minister, also PAM, they developed a regulation aiming to spur digital innovation and prepare for an economic growth. New legislations categorize essentially digital assets formerly covering major tokens like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other crypto assets. It outlines a tax break and subsidizes essentially for blockchain startups and developers effective of January 2026. Potential also regulatory sandboxes are slated for Vietnam's financial centers to encourage more growth. The law aims to position essentially Vietnam as a regional Web3 hub by 2030. Market expectations include positive shifts for institutional investors and crypto ventures, thanks to the forthcoming regulatory clarity. This could transform the nation's digital economy landscape. Historical trends from regions like the EU and Dubai highlight increased institutional and digital asset essentially activity post-regulation. Vietnam's regulatory clarity likely hurdles similar outcomes, enhancing essentially global market attractiveness and regional prominences. Smart nations are embracing crypto right now. Vietnam has legalized digital assets under its new digital industry law, effective of January 2026. This new significant essential move for the country's digital economy, and Vietnam's move has been embraced as a considerable step, resonating with digital essentially advancements in cryptocurrencies and digital assets. For additional insights of this that are going to be coming as well from Vietnam, Vietnam apparently is going to be releasing a lot more laws, a lot more regulations, and some ETFs and ETPs announcements could be coming very soon from Vietnam's market space also. Now, putting Vietnam's news to one side, which is brilliant news, more countries joining the crypto space and opening up their wallets, you could say, institutional wallets. Two, what's happening with essentially Tron. Now, a long time ago inside the crypto space, Justin Sun was a not very trusted person inside the crypto space. But over time, Justin Sun has been able to change his image inside the crypto space from a not trusted person to a much more trusted person, you could say, because Justin Sun's firm is about to go public inside the United States, as Eric Trump also is joining his leadership. You see, Justin Tron at one particular time was being heavily investigated by the CFTC and the SEC. But over time, when essentially the Trump presidency happened and we had this, essentially it is embrace of innovation and crypto growth, which is brilliant to see from Trump's administration being very positive on cryptocurrencies. Justin Sun also made some investments to change his image as well. One of his biggest investments was going for World Liberty Financial, which paid off. Because Justin Sun made a humongous, essentially, financial decision to go for World Liberty Financial and put a lot of money on the table, that made the SEC drop the case for Tron. Now, also, they're about to go public inside the United States, same country that was about to sue them into the ground. A company tied to Tron's blockchain founder Justin Sun is planning to go public inside the United States for a reverse merger with the Nasdaq-listed SRM Entertainment, according to a report by the Financial Times. Eric Trump is also expected to take leadership role in the new entity dubbed Tron Inc. The deal, arranged by the New York-based Domri Securities, marks a high-profile mix of crypto and Trump world influence. Domri itself has ties to both Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, and has previously drawn attention for sharp stock essentially moves ahead of filings. Tron Inc. is expected to operate as a corporate crypto vehicle holding TRX Tron tokens, the native token essentially of Tron blockchain, and implementing a staking-based divided plan similar to the model used by MicroStrategy under Michael Saylor. Sun will essentially serve as an advisor to the company. The initial essentially funding for the new venture includes $100 million in equity investments, with the potential to expand to $210 million through attractive warrants. SRM said this would support TRX treasury strategies, beginning with the token's contributions within the Tron ecosystem. So the same way Michael Saylor essentially is buying Bitcoin for essentially Strategy, the company, or essentially Metaplanet, the Japanese company that's just buying Bitcoin and adding it to their treasury. Well, now we have essentially a Tron treasury happening, but from a Tron company that's about to go live on the stock market. As blockchain adoption grows, Tron has become a leader in cross-border stablecoin settlements, said SRM CEO Rich Miller. And Justin Sun added that with over 310 million accounts and $20 billion in average daily transactions, Tron aims to serve as a core infrastructure for on-chain finance. TRX rose about 3% to essentially 28 cents following the announcements, while CRM Entertainment shares surged more than 270% in early trading times. And through Tron's operates under a decentralized, essentially governance structure known as Tron DAO, Sun still holds influence across the entire ecosystem. He also has stakes in multiple crypto businesses, including HTX, formerly known as Huobi Exchange, which did some dodgy behavior in the past, and essentially Polynex, Rainberry, BitTorrent, and leading apps like JustLend and SunSwap. Speaking after a private dinner with Donald Trump, Sun shrugged off claims that Trump meme coin amounts to a crypto bribe, calling the backlash a short-sighted and accusing critics of missing the bigger picture. Because Justin Sun made a huge purchase of Trump's meme coin and also made a huge investment in the World Liberty Financial crypto project, and then all of a sudden the SEC dropped the case for Tron, and all of a sudden Tron's company is about to get listed on the stock market. They're trying to say he's been bribing essentially certain members to get to where he is. Who knows? Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, but the timing's awfully interesting. Sun also hailed Trump's open embrace of digital assets as much needed jolt for US crypto policies and constructing with essentially what he described as Biden-era's clampdown that drove projects overseas facts. Sleepy Joe was an actual embarrassment in every perspective you could look at it. A Trump-hosted dinner for major essentially holders of his own Trump token, attended by crypto loyalists, met with protesters outside also. But for Sun, who was essentially Justin Sun, who was repressed by lots of news agents and so on, legal heat under his previous administration, it was clear that a sign of how much the climate has changed inside the United States since Donald Trump has taken essentially the presidency. Since Trump's return to office, the Securities and Exchange Commission has hit the pause button on several cases, including a civil fraud lawsuit against Justin Sun and Binance. Meanwhile, talks of Tron's ETF are gaining traction, suggesting that Washington once hostile stance may be softening towards cryptocurrencies. However, the Wall Street essentially Journal reported that the Department of Justice has been probing Sun since 2001, and also a reminder that federal security hasn't disappeared even if the tone has changed. Sun's alignment with Trump's crypto efforts dates back to last year when he reportedly scooped up as much as $75 million in World Liberty Financial tokens following the elections. Since then, he has doubled down on meme coins, urging they've essentially done more than most to bring in new users into the fold. Just want to point out, even if Justin Sun has made certain investments to open the way for himself, why not? Anybody else would have done the same, is what I would say to that. honestly. If you're a businessman and you feel like your business is essentially getting politically targeted and you want to make it go away, you have to pay. And it's exactly what he did to open doors for himself. So it's something that everybody would do. Everybody can judge Justin Sun up to a certain extent for buying World Liberty Financial tokens and also essentially buying Trump meme tokens to make his case go away and also get his company listed on the stock market. But it's a move that everybody would have done. If you owned your own crypto company and you are being politically targeted, the only thing to do is open up your wallet. Everybody knows that. You want to get politicians on your side, pay them off. Now, Coinbase is what we're going to talk about next. So, Coinbase's sponsorship of Trump's birthday and army parade. So, as we all know, what recently happened was Trump's birthday aligning exactly with the essentially US military's parade that was going on inside the United States. And Coinbase was the sponsor of this event, sponsoring essentially the US military. And a lot of people hated that. A lot of people, American citizens, have come out and said that they hated the idea that Coinbase was sponsoring essentially the US military. But I'll be honest, those same people would want the US military to protect them if anything happens to the United States, but disagree with the idea of Coinbase sponsoring the US military. It's the same type of people that say defund the police, but when someone robs their house, they call the police. It's just some people, the logic isn't there for them. And I've said in the past, and I'll say it again, NASA needs to stop essentially, researching how things are on Mars and start essentially examining some brains, because it's not all there for some people. It's never made sense to me how people say defund the police, but when their house gets robbed, they call the police. Or essentially people criticizing Coinbase for sponsoring the US military. But if anything happens to the US, it's the US military that's going to save those exact people. The logic isn't there for some people. But also, you could also say that it wasn't just because they were sponsoring the US military. No. It was because Coinbase was sponsoring a Trump event. But then Trump is the one that brought in crypto regulations. Trump is the one that got rid of crypto cases. Trump is the one that got rid of Gary Gensler. Trump is the one that opened the door for cryptocurrencies, opened the door for crypto stablecoin regulations, opened the door in general for cryptocurrencies. You could say worldwide. And people are criticizing Trump inside the crypto space. I'm telling you, it's the same people that say defund the police, but when their house gets robbed, they call the police. The logic isn't there. I'm telling you, NASA should stop essentially researching Mars and start researching some brain cells, because something is not right. Crypto exchange Coinbase is facing backlash for sponsoring US President Donald Trump's controversial military parade in Washington, D.C. Social media was flooded with videos and images of Coinbase sponsorship at the event, which is intended to mark the US's Army's 250th anniversary and coincided with Trump's 79th birthday. Longtime Coinbase customers also have come out with their, essentially words. For example, one of them being Adam, who took to X, essentially, and a lot of people took to X to share that he would be selling essentially his positions and moving away from essentially Coinbase, calling the organization's decision to back the event gross and bad marketing for mainstream digital asset adoptions. It's time for me to vote with my wallet and use alternatives that either align with my values or that can actually keep their credibility, neutral stance, instead of applying it to. If you told me a few years ago Coinbase would be a sponsor to a US military parade, I think you were insane. America's 250, the organization behind this past weekend's event, confirmed that the Brian Armstrong-led crypto exchange has essentially as one of its high-profile sponsors in June 9 press release. Additional sponsors of the parade include also the military giant Lockheed Martin, defense company Palantir, and shipping organization FedEx. Trump largely used essentially his remarks at the event to laud the US military, calling it the greatest, fiercest, and bravest fighting force globally, Every other country celebrates their victories. Trump told attendees it's about time America did too. However, not everyone was receptive to Trump's essentially militaristic groundstanding, with no king protests breaking out nationwide and opposing to the essentially parade for the US military. Today, I stand with the millions of Americans making this clear: this country doesn't belong to the king, said Senator Elizabeth Warren. Obviously, we know for a fact that Senator Elizabeth Warren is an absolute useless moron who decides to always jump on the bandwagon of hating Trump and tries to play the victim card, or I'm an angel and I'm perfect and I've done nothing wrong. But as I said previously, Elizabeth Warren's wage doesn't add up to her portfolio. But honestly, there's nothing else to say except what morons, honestly. Because if the US goes into the war with anyone, it's the US military that's going to protect those morons that are hating on the US military. And they're also hating Trump while being inside the crypto space, even though Trump was the one that opened the doors for the crypto space. And that Sleepy Joe's administration did nothing for the crypto space. It's just a funny world we live in, where, moving on from that to Metaplanet. Metaplanet has reached 10,000 Bitcoins. If you're wondering to yourself, who the hell is Metaplanet? Metaplanet is a Japanese company that one day decided to follow MicroStrategy's footsteps and essentially creating a Bitcoin treasury. Metaplanet was, you could say, up to a certain extent, a failing company before it did that move. And after it made itself a Bitcoin treasury in the Japanese stock market, its stocks went through the roof and are still doing tremendously well for itself. And they've reached their milestone. They said, day one, we're going to get to 10,000 Bitcoins and continue going forward. And now they have. Metaplanet reaches 10,000 Bitcoins target, surpassing Coinbase to become the 9th largest corporate Bitcoin holder. On Monday, essentially, Japanese investment firm Metaplanet announced that it had boosted its total holdings to 10,000 Bitcoins, reaching the previous target it had set this year. Metaplanet now owns the 9th biggest Bitcoin stash among publicly traded companies after overtaking essentially crypto exchange Coinbase. Metaplanet CEO Simon announced essentially on X that Tokyo-listed firm purchased an additional 1,112 Bitcoins for around $117.2 million at an average price essentially of 105,435 per Bitcoin. This lifted essentially its total Bitcoin holdings to 10,000 essentially Bitcoins. Data tracked by BitcoinTreasuries.net shows Coinbase's global holds are around 9,267, meaning that Metaplanet, the Japanese company that started with 0 Bitcoins, has now passed Coinbase. The acquisition is another sign of investor confidence in the world's largest and oldest essential crypto, despite the Israel and Iran war and geopolitical tensions that are going on. Metaplanet, which has essentially molded itself an aggressive Bitcoin approach on MicroStrategy essentially strategy, earlier this year and this month, announced a revised target to hold over 210,000 Bitcoins by the end of 2027, referencing a global hold of 1% of the entire Bitcoin supply. After reaching 10,000 Bitcoins, the company will need to buy a further 200,000 Bitcoins over the next 18 months to reach that target. Metaplanet wants to now essentially get to a target of 210,000 Bitcoins. They just reached 10,000 Bitcoins, and now they want to climb that ladder to get to 210,000 Bitcoins. To fund additional Bitcoin buys, Metaplanet recently unveiled plans to raise up to $5.3 billion via the issuance of 555 million new shares over the next 2 years. Also, on June 16th, Metaplanet said that its board of essentially directors had resolved to issue its 18th series of $210 million of bonds to Evo funds and also a Cayman Islands-based investment firm. The bonds essentially bear no interest and are set to mature on December 12, 2025. The funds raised are scheduled to be allocated towards the purchase of Bitcoin, and the company stated, meanwhile, Strategy remains the world's biggest corporate holder with holdings essentially of 592,000 100 bitcoins, following its buy of 10,100 bitcoins for approximately essentially $1.05 billion between June 9th and June 15th. And yes, he did purchase more essentially bitcoins, is essentially what MicroStrategy did. As we all know, Sailor just keeps on buying bitcoin no matter what the price point is. He does not care. He doesn't care at all. He just wants to pack that wallet up. Now, moving on essentially from MicroStrategy or Metaplanet to a crypto project that some people should be familiar with and some people might have not heard of. But that crypto project, essentially, that project is White Rock Finance. So everybody in the past should have heard of a crypto project called ZK Casino. ZK Casino was a scam project inside the crypto space. Now, one particular essentially crypto investigator who is quite good at his job at finding out what is a scam, what isn't a scam, and does very deep research, which is Zach XBT. He has found out that essentially there are links between White Rock Finance and ZK Casino in terms of the exit scam that happened. So crypto investigator Zach XBT has put out essentially a community warning showing shocking connections between the $30 million of ZK Casino exit scam and more recent project White Rock Finance, or essentially the ticker White. ZK Casino is a crypto project related to gambling that took more than $33 million in investments during a pre-sale. However, instead of providing what they guaranteed on its roadmap, the ZK team is set to essentially have utilized the funds for themselves. In April 2024, essentially, Elhem, also known as essentially Derivatives Ape, was arrested by Dutch authorities. Some of the stolen funds from ZK Casino scam were also seized during the arrest. Later in 2024, after Elhem was released, the stolen money began moving again, and the funds were launched essentially through multiple blockchains like ZK, essentially Sync, StarConnect, Solana, and EVM-based networks. The money laundering methods involved in cashing out via the OTC, essentially brokers, exchanging into the privacy coin Monero, XMR, through exchanges and trading especially contracts using platforms like Hyper, essentially Fluid. At the same time, there was also a new cryptocurrency project named White Rock, which everybody has been essentially, I've seen a lot of posts inside X this past 2 weeks, essentially, that I've been on vacation about Rock, essentially White Rock. I've seen essentially the ticker White, some outrageous contracts and bases and things like that, which are all being fake. Every single news I've seen about White, the ticker White, has all been fake news. And now it's coming out that White is actually linked to ZK Casino, which was the scam crypto project, which also their founders were arrested and then released, and then the funds started moving again. Many of their wallets were funded using quick exchanges. Furthermore, they made great claims of having a larger user base and support through USDX, but provided little data or transparency to back this up. Zach XBT followed marketing wallet transactions from White Rock that mixed with ZK Casino stolen funds. One influencer even verified being directly paid by a wallet belonging to both projects. These revelations indicate that at least one ZK, essentially Casino insider, can now be implicated in White Rock. Zach also calls for the crypto community to be on high alert and not to engage with the project. So please be aware that White Rock is actually a scam, and that White Rock is technically ZK Casino. It just came back as a rebrand. So if you've seen those essentially X tweets about White this, hashtag White that, hashtag White project this, hashtag this contract White has just done, or hashtag White has just made a contract, White Rock made a contract with XRP Ledger, with XRP companies, it's all fake news regarding White Rock. Now, moving on from that scam crypto project to Europe. Europe is moving rapidly quick. In fact, a lot of US essentially institutions have said they're making tremendous amounts of investments in Europe in the next essentially years to come. Even BlackRock themselves said they're going to be investing billions of dollars in Europe's market space, because in terms of essentially going into this digital future, Europe has done tremendously well in terms of the MiCA regulations and what they've brought to the table, being, you know, restrictive, but also open for innovation. So here it is. What's happening now in Europe is a multitude of ETPs. European crypto ETPs continues to attract interest. Digital asset manager 21 Shares has announced the cross-listing of 5 crypto ETFs, sorry, 5 crypto ETPs on the Nasdaq Stockholm exchange. With the move, the issuer has 10 products listed on Swedish exchanges right now. According to its official announcement, the newly listed ETPs are for Uniswap, Avalanche, Bitcoin Gold, Solana Core Stake, and Ethereum Core. 21 Shares existing products on the exchange already include ETPs for Bitcoin's ABTC, Ethereum under the ticker essentially AETH, Solana under the ticker of ASOL, XRP under the ticker of AXRP, and Bitcoin Core under the ticker of CBDC. According to the firm, its expansion is a part of its efforts to increase its presence in the Nordic region and give investors access to regulated and transparent digital asset products. Its head of financial products and developments, Mandy Cho, noted that these products allow investors to diversify their portfolios and make them more resilient. She also said, "Our continued expansion in the Nordic region reflects the increasing demand from both retail and institutional investors for diversified and cost-effective crypto exposure." Meanwhile, the head of the ETFs and the ETP for Nasdaq European markets, Helena, expressed excitement about the new products from 21 Shares. Hedden also essentially said that the new ETPs reflects the recurrent and current wave of innovation inside the financial sectors, while highlighting the exchange's role in bringing the products to the masses in the European essentially market space and beyond. Meanwhile, 21 Shares is Europe's biggest digital asset product issuer, while listing on 6 exchanges, including essentially Europe Next Paris, Amsterdam, 6 Swiss Exchange, and London Stock Exchange also. It has recently listed Hedera and essentially Kronos, Crow, ETPs on Euronext Paris and Amsterdam's essentially stock exchange. However, its reach extends beyond Europe also, with the asset issuer also having a spot in Bitcoin and Ethereum essentially ETFs listed in the US. Interestingly, it's currently pending ETF application for altcoins before the SEC as well, while it has dozens of ETPs, 3 of which are in the top 20 of assets under management in Europe. 21 Shares products have struggled with outflows of most of its products this year. According to CoinShares data, the firm currently has outflows of $212 million year to date for its products. And the massive essentially outflows is likely because most of its underlying products for its ETP are essentially altcoins, which have struggled to see sizable gains in 2025. And still, 21 Shares reported a $4 million inflow last week, taking its month-to-date flow to a positive $6 million. Despite the struggles of 21 Shares, the crypto ETP market in Europe is growing at a rapid pace. Germany particularly has attracted significant inflows in digital assets and products this year. Just to give you an example of how much money is being brought to the table inside the European market space, just for some particular crypto ETPs, well, Germany has brought to the table $908 million, a record that is only bested by the US, according to CoinShares data. Retail investors have also been driving force behind these inflows, but institutional investors are showing interest. According to the ETF also stream, fund of fund allocation to crypto ETFs to crypto ETPs has increased from 45 million euros to 138 million euros between 2023 and 2025. While it still accounts for only a small portion of digital assets under management in terms of ETPs, it indicates that more essentially professional investors are paying attention to crypto investment products. In other words, a lot of European companies, institutions are entering the crypto space because of the tremendous amount of ETPs that are happening in the European market space. Meanwhile, more retail investors will likely access to crypto ETPs soon, with the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, recently essentially that it wants to lift the ban on retail investors buying crypto ETFs, ETNs, essentially inside the United Kingdom. With the UK having about 30 ETNs listed on its exchange, the decision could attract more inflows to crypto, essentially class assets, digital assets. Interestingly, Europe has about 130 crypto ETPs. Europe has 130 crypto ETPs listed across various exchanges, which are available to the public. However, the US could see soon many of its essentially products with more than 70 crypto ETF applications right now. The US has 70 crypto ETF applications on its table right now to approve by the SEC. And already Europe has 130 crypto ETPs passed. However, the US could also see the 70 essential crypto ETF applications currently before the US SEC to be passed or essentially, extended, you could say, with the SEC. So that's the news essentially that's coming in from Europe, 130 ETPs. Now, before we go through the next news on tonight's live, which is regarding Argentina, which has also advanced quite a bit inside the digital sector, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go straight into the Argentinian news. And as I previously, this is live as always, which means if you have any questions, put it down in the comment section. So let's see where we're inside the comment section. We were at here. Good evening, Miles and family. Good to see you again. Carlos, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and family. Sandra, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Greetings, Miles and CMF. Long time no see. Hope all is well. Let's go. Ray, good to see you. How you doing, brother? How you been? I'm Free Feather. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Good to see you, Free Feather. How you doing? I understand you, Miles. Let's go with us regarding the whole, essentially, Coinbase sponsorship. Yeah. Money. Europe's money is dirty, and US is all that matters, fam. Money is money. That's essentially a British saying. Money is money land. So it doesn't matter where the money comes from. Money is money. Hi, Miles and CMF. Stormy, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Now, first look at Argentina's crypto-compliant tokenization framework. So some details have been released of where Argentina is heading towards in terms of regulations, in terms of tokenizations, rules and regulations for the crypto space, and so on. So here's a first look of what's happening over there. Argentina's National Securities Commission, CNV, approved the final rules for tokenization of real-world assets today. Resolution 1069 establishes a framework for digital representation of financial trusts and closed-end investment funds. This follows a public consultation period ending May, essentially 24th. The regulation operates under Law 27.739. It creates a legal pathway for tokenization of non-tradable assets like real estate or commodities. Tokenized assets must trade exclusively on registered virtual asset service providers and platforms. Investors cannot withdraw tokens to private wallets, but may exchange them for traditional asset forms anytime. This is the first part of the regulation which went out for public consultation with the General Resolution number 1060, and it is the fundamental as it puts our country once again on the forefront of the region and the world, commented by the CNV president, Roberto. 1 year regulatory essentially sandbox starts immediately. Issuers may tokenize essentially eligible assets during this period using CNV approved platforms. After essentially the sandbox ends, new tokenized offers and holds. Existing tokens remain valid through untokenized essentially approvals and expire after 24 months. So Argentina has created essentially a digital sandbox where essentially crypto companies can come out and showcase their digital products to see which one is the better option for tokenization, in other words. And platforms must disclose asset terms in issuance of documents. The VSPs handle custody and trading under CNV oversight. Roberto Silvia, CNV president, confirmed by public feedback shaped the rules, a second essentially regulatory phase addressing other asset types in under review. Silvia also stated that this positioned Argentina among early adopters of asset tokenization frameworks. The Argentinian FinTech Chamber has proposed a similar sandbox model 6 months prior. The rules clarify that 3 operational requirements: asset backing documentation for all tokens, real-time settlements also through systems, mandatory disclosures of redemption procedures, and this initial phase excludes publicly traded securities and derivatives. Analysts also observe it and essentially enable fractional ownership of high-level assets like farmland or machinery, and traditional finance entities may now develop tokenized products under the CMV supervision. Market participants await further essentially guidelines covering debt instruments and intellectual property rights. So what Argentina is doing in terms of their tokenization, the first look that we just essentially have right now, could be the steps that other Latin American countries essentially also follow in terms of tokenization rules and regulations, which one of them particularly being that if you are inside the tokenization market space in Argentina, for example, let's say a house gets tokenized and you want to buy a part of this house through tokenization, and let's say you do buy it, you can't sell your shares and essentially or move your tokenized assets into a private wallet of your own. You can, however, sell it back and then move your money essentially back into, you could say, a wallet, but a wallet that they essentially agree upon, you could say they supervise. So they're trying to do it in a way where money laundering doesn't happen and that people just don't buy tokenized assets and move it off to private wallets, then that later on could be used for money laundering situations. So it could also be something that the rest of the world adapts to as well, where, for example, if you buy a share through tokenization of a house, of a car, of a mansion, of a penthouse, of a, essentially a hotel, which Hilton Hotel was doing, essentially building a tokenization project, that you can't buy shares and then move them off to your private wallet. They have to stay on the platform due to money laundering. That could be something that would be essentially happening later on, not just in Latin American countries or Argentina, could happen worldwide, where you can't move things off to private wallets. Now, Michael Saylor is who we're going to talk about next. Michael Saylor once tried to get India to invest into Bitcoin. He also tried to get Microsoft to invest into Bitcoin and Meta to invest into Bitcoin. Meta's board rejected it. Microsoft's board rejected it. Amazon's board rejected it. And then MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, decided to go to India to try to get the Indian government to create some sort of a Bitcoin strategy. He also talked to quite a lot of Indian companies to create some sort of a Bitcoin strategy. And India rejected it. So far, everybody that MicroStrategy has spoken to regarding creating a Bitcoin ETF, essentially a Bitcoin treasury, they've rejected it completely. So MicroStrategy decided to go across the pond from India to Pakistan. Michael Saylor advises Pakistan on Bitcoin reserves. Michael Saylor, the executive chairman of strategy, met with Pakistan's finance minister, Mohammed, and state minister for blockchain, Bilal, to discuss Bitcoin reserves and digital asset policies in Pakistan. Pakistan's discussions with Michael Saylor indicate potential for strict Bitcoin adoption and impacting essentially both national policies and regional digital asset dynamics. Michael Saylor's recent meeting with Pakistanis key officials focused on advising the nation on creating a Bitcoin strategy. During the meeting, Saylor emphasized the importance of the reputation and clear policies for attracting investments to Pakistan. The discussions were essentially marked as an important step in Pakistan's endeavor to formulate a robust digital asset policy framework and position the nation as a leader in global south for digital innovation. Pakistan has many brilliant people and a lot of people that do business with you. If the world trusts you and they hear your words, the capital and the credibility will inflow to Pakistan, said essentially Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor's visit essentially has centered on Pakistan's ambition to harness its talents and resources to match the global leaders in digital asset policies and the nation's initiative that ties into wider economic objectives, including creating a Bitcoin reserve and potentially transforming its physical landscape through blockchain technologies. The bold moves by Pakistan's government could lead to increased interest in Bitcoin transactions within the region. And the potential of Pakistan to replicate successful digital strategies used in other countries underscore the nation's readiness for technological transformation. So, Michael Saylor is trying to get Pakistan on board because he failed to get Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and India's government to create a Bitcoin reserve. He failed on all of those movements, but he's moved on to Pakistan now to get that government involved in a Bitcoin treasury. Let's see how that goes for Michael Saylor. Moving on from that to El Salvador. El Salvador keeps on buying Bitcoin despite the International Monetary Fund's loan terms. So the IMF told El Salvador a very long time ago, you need to stop buying crypto, you need to stop buying Bitcoin, you need to stop going towards Bitcoin. That was the first time they had conversations. And instead, if they agreed with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF would give them loans or also make their debt, much more easier to pay, which are essentially El Salvador rejected the first time around. Somewhere down the line, the IMF came back to El Salvador and said that, okay, if you don't want to get rid of your Bitcoin, that's, here or there. Instead, don't make it that your citizens can start using Bitcoin for transactions and so on and so on, which El Salvador came to some sort of conclusions with them. However, it was also said that they no longer should be, buying a tremendous amount of Bitcoin, which seems like El Salvador doesn't care. El Salvador is quietly adding essentially to its Bitcoin reserves, even after securing a $1.4 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund that discouraged further crypto accumulation. So you could even say that the IMF told El Salvador, don't buy Bitcoin. El Salvador said, yes, no problem, we agree, give us the $1.4 billion. And when they received the $1.4 billion from the International Monetary Fund, you could even say El Salvador might have spent the money on crypto. According to the country's Bitcoin office, the government's treasury wallet now holds 6,209 Bitcoins, up by 240 coins since December 19, 2024, the day the International Monetary Fund deal was finalized. So since the deal was made with the International Monetary Fund, El Salvador has added 240 coins more to its treasury. President essentially Bukele one Bitcoin a day strategy launched in 2022 appears to be continuing despite the loan's formal restrictions. The International Monetary Fund essentially agreement required El Salvador to remove Bitcoin's legal tender status and halt public purchases. Yet so far the country remains on one side, at least technically. El Salvador continues to comply with their commitment of non-accumulation of Bitcoin by overall physical sector, said Rodriguez, the International Monetary Fund's Western Hemisphere director, during a briefing. Observers point to the wiggle room in the deal's wording. The International Monetary Fund's flexible interpretation suggests that these purchases might be routed through a non-public entities or reclassified holdings, said essentially blockchain advisor Andy. It also allows the country to keep its Bitcoin-friendly stance while still unlocking international monetary funds. While the treasury wallet grows, crypto remittances tell a different story. According to El Salvador's Central Reserve Bank, Bitcoin-powered transfers dropped 44.5% in the first quarter of 2025. Compared to the same period last year, remittances sent via crypto totaled just $16 million, down from $28.3 million earlier on in the year, and now account for just 0.52% of incoming essentially transfers. That decline suggests that everyday adoption remains limited, even as the government doubles down on its Bitcoin playbook. El Salvador made history essentially back in September 2021 by becoming the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. However, the nation's growing crypto sector faced international scrutiny, and essentially El Salvador reached an agreement with the International Monetary Fund on that matter as well. Now, the International Monetary Fund has been vocal against El Salvador's Bitcoin law since its inception in September 2021, and it has raised concerns over customer confusion when choosing between Bitcoin and fiat currencies, and warned that such dual pricing systems could lead to inefficiencies. So, it seems like the money that El Salvador received from the International Monetary Fund, which is $1.4 billion, to stop buying Bitcoin, to stop making its citizens use Bitcoin, El Salvador used that money to buy Bitcoin with the International Monetary Fund money. I mean, you can't blame the guy. He just got free money to spend now. JP Morgan is what we're going to be talking about next. Apparently, news is coming out that JP Morgan is about to be filing in for a JPMD trademark for crypto payment services. JP Morgan Chase & Co. recently filed a trademark for JPMD aimed at enhancing its crypto payment services. The trademark filing highlights JP Morgan's commitments to expanding digital finance initiatives aimed at a growing market demand for cryptocurrency services. So, JP Morgan, once known as a bank that hates crypto, despises crypto, and anybody that uses crypto is a criminal, is now filing in for a crypto company. JP Morgan and Chase & Co., led by CEO Jamie Dimon, files a trademark for JPMD targeting crypto payment expansion. Despite Jamie Dimon's criticism of cryptocurrencies, this move aligns with clients' evolving needs for digital finance. We are going, essentially, he said, we are going to allow you to buy Bitcoin. Jamie Dimon, CEO JP Morgan Chase, said at the 2025 Annual Investor Day. We're not going to custody it. We're going to put it in a statement for clients. The filing affects large cap cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, giving JP Morgan's existing client access options. This could lead to essentially a broader adoption of digital currencies within traditional finances, impacting markets also positively. The trademark aims to position JP Morgan's competitively in the digital finance landscape, potentially influencing institutional involvements. A shift towards regulated digital asset services may result essentially underpinned by previous trademark approvals and increasing client interest. Technological and regulatory developments could shape the future of digital payments, with JP Morgan Street positioning the integration of crypto services might set a precedent for essentially other financial entities exploring the sector, and historical trends from prior trademark actions support this trajectory. There's one thing, there's some people need to understand, some people might already know this inside the crypto space, that the old saying inside the crypto space, if the world is going to operate on a crypto basis, there's technically no need for banks. And that banks one day will become obsolete, because if I can make a transfer wallet to wallet, let's say if I'm a business and I want to purchase something from, essentially somewhere based in Singapore. Let's say I want to make a transaction to a company based in Singapore. I could just make a wallet to wallet transaction. I could do that essentially. However, the reason why some people, you could say, also would prefer to use banks, even in a digital world, is for security purposes, because that a bank could safeguard their money from essentially malicious attacks and hackers and so on. So that's why some banks won't go obsolete and some will. Now, Swedish healthcare is what we're going to talk about next. A Swedish healthcare company has decided to essentially create some sort of a Bitcoin treasury. They're raising money. So, Swedish healthcare firm H100 Group raises $75 million for Bitcoin. In a notable move, Swedish healthcare firm H100 Group announced its plans to raise $75 million to purchase Bitcoin, aligning its balance sheet with the principles of traditional, essentially, with individual sovereignty. The event highlights a shift towards Bitcoin in the healthcare sector, potentially prompting similar strategies. The market reacted essentially with a stock price surge of 45% on the announcement. Swedish healthcare also company H100 Group plans to integrate Bitcoin into its financial strategy by raising $75 million. This decision marks a significant shift essentially in the company, previously essentially uninvolved in digital assets. Sander Anderson, the CEO, stated that the move aligns with the Bitcoin community's sovereignty values. Adam Back, CEO essentially of Blockstream and Cyberpunk advocate, leads funding essentially partnerships for H100 Group. With additional support from multiple investors, the firm has secured significant loans for Bitcoin treasuries. Market shares also responded robustly, accelerating the company's stock value. The values of individual essentially sovereignty is highly present in the Bitcoin community, aligns well with essentially its appeal to customers and communities. We are building the H100 platform for, essentially said Sander Anderson, the CEO of H100 Group. And H100 Group raises that $75 million to invest in Bitcoins by acquiring Bitcoin signals a transformative essentially approach in traditionally conservative sectors. Investors reacted positively to that, and the stock dramatically rising in price. Financial implications also include enhanced corporate treasuries for Bitcoin as a focus asset. The strategy's success reflected by surging market values and provides a promising precedent for other firms to follow in their footsteps. No recent essentially regulatory hurdles have emerged since the announcement has been made by this Swedish healthcare company. Insights from H100 Street Bitcoin's move suggest broader adoption could drive sectors of wider interest in digital assets, and the decision, a parallel to MicroStrategy's agenda, highlights the potential gains. Swedish healthcare market environments remains unaffected by regulatory challenges and fostering essentially innovation and potential adoption of digital currencies. What we're going to be talking about next is essentially Singapore. So moving off the Swedish healthcare company H100, let's again essentially raising $75 million to invest into a Bitcoin strategy, to Singapore. But before we talk about Singapore, let's go inside the comment section first. As I said previously, this is live as always. If you do have any questions or comments, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out. So let's see inside the comment section, and then we'll go straight into the next news, which is around Singapore. Let's see where we were at. Yeah, they still don't allow crypto payments. Chase Bank, even though they secretly love crypto, which is facts. Some banks don't allow people still to buy crypto, even though their banks are involved in crypto. It was like essentially back then when HSBC Bank said their users are not allowed to buy crypto, even if it is $20 investment, even though HSBC Bank had a $5 million investment on digital land in Sandbox. Now, Singapore. A Singapore-based company to allocate $12 million to a Bitcoin reserve. The move follows a successful $30 million fundraising round and positions the company at the intersection of agricultural markets and blockchain innovation. The company aims to transform its business model by combining Bitcoin reserves with real-world asset tokenizations, according to the announcement. Davis Commodities will begin by essentially deploying $4.5 million or 15% of its raised capital into BTC. Over time, the company plans to increase its allocations to 40% of total funds, citing Bitcoin's global status as a scarce, inflation-resistant asset. The initiative underscores a growing trend among essentially non-tech corporates exploring Bitcoin as a financial hedge and growth catalyst. This marks one of the first times a traditional commodities firm in Asia has formally incorporated Bitcoin reserves into its financial strategy. With this move, Davis Commodities joins the ranks of public companies like MicroStrategy and Similar Scientific that are using Bitcoin as a long-term balance of essentially a balance on their sheet assets. The company's dual focus on digital assets and exposure and agriculture commodities leadership could set a new precedent for a sector-wide financial innovation. So a Singaporean-based company has also decided to create some sort of a Bitcoin strategy. Now, moving on essentially from Singapore on the Bitcoin strategy to IBM, Microsoft, and quantum computing. So we know for a fact that the UK, for example, is very big on quantum computing. Europe is very big on quantum computing. The US is very big on the idea of quantum computing. And China is extremely big on the idea of quantum computing. And that there has been talks that quantum computing could essentially be the end of, essentially certain wallets on the Bitcoin network. Now, that topic has always been going around inside the crypto space, that quantum computing could be the end of Bitcoin and so on. Well, here is some essentially news on that matter of quantum computing, not the end of Bitcoin, but the quantum computing matter. An initiative led by major tech firms, IBM and Microsoft have come together. A new coalition has emerged, focusing on post-quantum cryptographic, aiming to bolster cybersecurity defenses against quantum computing threats. IBM and Microsoft has come together to protect essentially people in essentially that digital world and also in the quantum computing world. As quantum computing technology advances, industries are prompted to fortify their cryptographic infrastructures to prevent future vulnerabilities. The coalition essentially underscores significant collaborations in the technology sector, although its effects on essentially cryptocurrencies and regulations remain indirect. IBM and Microsoft have announced a coalition to advance post-cryptographies involving top technologists and researchers. Their focus aligns essentially with the industry's wide shift towards heightened cybersecurity measures, particularly in the wake of potential quantum computing breakthroughs. This collaborative effort involves developing quantum-safe cryptographic solutions, essentially a crucial step in considering past sensational claims surrounding quantum computing capabilities. The collaboration also builds on IBM's and Microsoft's established roles in enterprise securities. And while the coalition's activities focus on enterprise essentially security, an immediate impact on cryptocurrencies or regulatory actions is not observed. The crypto market has not shown noticeable movements attributed to this essentially partnership. Historically debunked claims regarding quantum hacking essentially have heightened in industries' readiness to adapt to this scenario, and enterprise cybersecurity stands to benefit significantly as the collaboration progresses. However, no direct effect is seen on specific cryptocurrencies or DeFi protocols. Industry observers await further updates on potential technology standards and shifts past quantum computing claims, also including the debunked Chinese hacking story, have sparked wide speculation yet yield minimal essentially cryptocurrency impact. Such events essentially emphasize the need for a preparedness without essentially overreaction. Recent headlines have proclaimed that Chinese scientists have hacked the military-grade encryption using quantum computing, sparking concerns and speculation about the future of cybersecurity. However, a closer examination reveals that while Chinese researchers have made essentially advances in quantum computing, the news reports are huge oversight, and Forbes editorial team Forbes, October 16, 2024, essentially re-edited that article. Experts' opinions highlighted the importance of developing a robust quantum-safe encryption, noting that previous sensational reports did not lead to essentially concrete crypto market disruptions, and leaders in cryptography expect these collaborative efforts to set a new security benchmark. So, essentially, sorry about that. We had a moron inside the conversation. Essentially, with this, the quantum computing advancing quite a lot in Europe, in Canada, in the US, in China, in the UK, there's also the other side of obviously keeping people safe in a quantum computing world, which is what IBM and Microsoft are going to achieve together. IBM also being the partner of Metaco, Metaco being a Ripple company. IBM, Metaco, essentially, and Ripple created a custodian also. Remember that. Ripple has created essentially a very, very institutional grade crypto storage wallet for institutions, high grade, with Metaco, which they purchased with IBM. And IBM now is a partner of Microsoft trying to keep people safe in a digital world for quantum computing. Now, moving on essentially from that to Cardano. Cardano has integrated XRP and RLUSD to enhance DeFi operations. There's a lot of things around XRP right now, around Ripple, a lot of positiveness that's happening on that matter. And one of them is this, and there's a few more to go through on tonight's live. So here it is. Cardano integrates XRP and RLUSD to enhance DeFi operations. Cardano's founder, Charles, has announced plans for XRP and RLUSD integration into Bloster DeFi operations. Cardano's strict integration of XRP and RLUSD marks a step towards a greater interoperability and stablecoin adoption, potentially reshaping DeFi landscapes. Charles, the founder of Cardano, announced a comprehensive package integrating XRP and RLUSD for Cardano's DeFi network. The plan includes a wallet support, DeFi features, and multi-chain airdrops. This move essentially strengthens Cardano's positioning in the blockchain innovation and user engagements through interoperability. There's a whole XRP package with the Gracer drop, Lace wallet support, XRP DeFi, and the real USD talks, said Charles. XRP and RLUSD will be incorporated in Cardano's DeFi stacks and infrastructure, as essentially Charles has outlined. Cardano's team will implement integrations, including supporting DeFi, airdrops, and wallets and functionalities. Ripple's stablecoin RLUSD adds another dimension to Cardano's ecosystem. Immediate industry essentially effects include potential boosts in its liquidity and user activity and Cardano's DeFi protocols. Integrating these assets supports a new liquidity avenues and enhances cross-chain utility. Cardano aims to capitalize on expanded essentially market reach and integrations. The broader essential implications involve possible shifts in financial markets and partnership opportunities. Cardano's ecosystem may attract institutional attention given the focus on interoperability and essentially asset management. Technological advancements in the wallet compatibility and DeFi innovations are anticipated. Future essential paradigms could involve enhanced Cardano DeFi applications or governance structures. Also, historical trends from similar integrations and other networks indicate potential liquidity growth and increased total value locked TVL, aligning with Cardano's expansion goals. So, Cardano, XRP, RLUSD, they're going on the Cardano chain, which is a massive positive and it brings a lot of liquidity to the table. But there's been a lot of things happening on the XRP ledger, a lot of activity that's been happening on the XRP ledger also. We've also, the USDC announcement that was made, which was major news. But obviously the major news was happening at the same time of the geopolitical tensions that are happening. And then straight after we have the Israel and Iran war situation as well. Now, on the topic of XRP and cryptocurrencies in general, an ex-CFTC chairman backs Bitcoin and XRP bonds for the US financial shift. So an ex-CFTC chairman has come out, an essentially CFTC board member has come out and essentially said that Bitcoin and XRP bonds should be the essentially backed by the US financial shift that's happening. A former Commodities Futures and Trading Commission chairman, Christopher, has confirmed that government bonds backed by Bitcoin and XRP are no longer just a theoretical idea. He believes the United States is now on a practical path towards integrating digital assets into public finance. This man was a CFTC chairman, former CFTC chairman, coming out essentially right now and saying that Bitcoin and XRP is no longer essentially this scenario of la la land, but Bitcoin and XRP, US government is behind it now. He believes that the United States is now on a practical path towards integrating digital assets into public finance. Speaking at the XRP Las Vegas conference, in an interview with Bradley Kims of Digital Perspectives, Christopher stated that both federal and local governments are actively considering ways to issue and manage financial instruments using crypto assets. According to him, discussions in Washington are currently being Discussions in Washington are currently being discussing seriously how governments could hold, issue, or even acquire instruments that are on cryptocurrency-related projects. Christopher said such essential interest is not only at the federal level, but the state and local governments are also exploring this idea and approaches that will help them essentially modernize their financial infrastructure with the help of digital assets. He observed that there was a major policy transition in the Trump administration, primarily in the treatment of seized digital assets by federal agencies. As opposed to essentially liquidating seized cryptocurrencies, the existing tendencies lies in keeping them as a part of a strict reserve of funds in a long-term perspective. Christopher emphasized that this retention of policy does not require Congress to act. Executives, agencies already have the authority to hold essentially assets obtained through forfeit, making this a direct actionable strategy. This shift also has already taken from, as in March 2025, President Trump signed an executive order to establish that strict reserve. The reserve currently holds over 200,000 bitcoins, which most of it essentially came from seizures. Additionally, the administration created the digital stockpile to manage Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. These are essentially to be owned and facilitated the national interest, similar to strict essentially petroleum reserves of the US to control the energy prices in the market. Christopher compared the crypto reserves and other strict essential reserves of governments across the world. According to him, the US would need to acquire its reserves of digital commodities to combat the actions of BRICS countries designed to undermine the global financial powers of the dollar. The possibility of XRP becoming a part of the federal portfolio was also addressed, particularly aimed at the essentially legal battle between Ripple and the SEC, which will seemingly be resolved soon. The conclusion can result in federal ownership of XRP through punishments or settlements. Christopher criticized earlier administrations for selling crypto assets early. He noted that long-term holding would have delivered higher returns and reduced financial pressure on public essentially budgets. Christopher's statements marks a turning point in the US financial strategy where Bitcoin and XRP-backed bonds are gaining traction. The integration of digital assets into public finance is steadily becoming a structured and actionable policy path. So according to Christopher, a former CFTC chairman, XRP case gets resolved. XRP will become some sort of a federal token, some sort of a federal project. That equals to massive amounts of dollar signs. Money, lots of money, too much money. On the topic of XRP ledger activity surges. So, whale wallets are peaking right now. XRP Ledger's activity has intensified, with daily active addresses raising sevenfold, while whale wallets are reaching an all-time high. According to on-chain data from June 2025, XRP's rising activity suggests a broadening, essentially, in market involvements, potentially driving price changes and prompting investor attention. In recent months, XRP's ledger network activity has seen significant change. Daily active addresses have escalated essentially from average of 35,000 essentially to nearly 300,000. This marks a sevenfold increase, heightening essentially the unprecedented surge. Meanwhile, there is also a substantial amount of increase in whale and essentially shark wallets, which have reached record numbers of over 2,700. These wallets have now essentially hold a significant XRP position, indicating an increased market concentration and potential institutional engagements. This significant essentially boost in XRP's activity directly impacts its price, currently ranging from $2.32 and $2.90. These figures point to a 440% increase over the past month, reflecting intensified market dynamics and additionally an increase in whale wallet signals a broader interest in XRP from major financial players. Since its launch, XRP has never captured the attention of whales to this extent. XRP whales activity has reached an all-time high now. Historical trends often show that whale activity and addresses surge can hurdle rapid market rallies. They frequently bring volatility. Typically, such periods attract heightened speculation and price fluctuations. XRP might essentially experience volatility spikes, reflecting historical precedents during notable events. Experts and market analysts point to potential implications for XRP's future value and regulatory landscape. On-chain data suggests that continued institutional interest might set a new market dynamic. So there's a massive wave of happening in terms of XRP wallets and XRP wallet holders and XRP whale holders that are happening as well. On top of that, institutions turn bullish on Ripple XRP, aimed the lawsuit conclusion optimism. Ripple's coin essentially is likely to rally a bullish sentiment rises among institutional investors. According to the latest CoinShares report that came out today, the likely end of the long-running Ripple vs. SEC lawsuit in the coming weeks may have led institutions to accumulate XRP massively, which could essentially add up to the news regarding data that's coming out in terms of wallet activity on XRP that's having a massive surge. Analysts turned bullish on XRP's price, aimed at recent recovery across the crypto markets, aimed talks to resolve the situation that got geopolitical tensions that are going on as well, and also regarding resolving the matter of the case. Crypto asset investment products saw $1.9 billion in inflows last week, reported by CoinShares on June 16th. It was essentially on 9 consecutive weeks of inflows, extended to year-on-to-year date of inflows of $13.2 billion. Bitcoin investment funds recovered after recording sell-offs for 2 consecutive weeks, despite the Israel and Iran conflicts, with $1.3 billion in inflows. Short Bitcoin products also recorded a modest inflows of $3.7 million, indicating interest in wider investment products. And Ethereum maintained also its positive momentum with $583 million in inflows, and the largest since February. It's also essentially included the strongest single-day inflow of ETH. Institutional demand for XRP recovered after 3 weeks. It recorded $11.8 million in buying, aimed a positive sentiment related to Ripple vs. SEC lawsuit ending that's coming up. As per the report, institutional investors were largely bullish inside the United States. Spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs also, along with other funds, saw a net inflow of $1.9 billion. Meanwhile, Switzerland, Germany, Canada saw inflows of $20.7 million, $39.2 million, and $12.1 million. In contrast, Hong Kong and Brazil experienced outflows of $56.8 million and essentially $8.5 million. XRP's price jumped more than 3% higher in the past 24 hours. It's even higher, up to 7%, if I'm not mistaken. With the price trending essentially at $2.21 at the time of this article, the 24-hour low, and a high of $2.14 and $2.24. Furthermore, the trading volume has increased by 22% in the last 24 hours, indicating a rise in interest among traders. Traders need to monitor trading volumes, as essentially sudden rise of today could trigger a major rally towards $3. They're saying essentially XRP is on the way to $3 based on this case coming to an end, based on the amount of activity that's happening in terms of wallets increasing inside of XRP or whale wallets increasing their portfolio on XRP. Analysts are also suggesting that investors to get ready for the next leg up on XRP's price. The $2.33 level continued as a key level to watch to pivot towards the rally of $3 as per Coinbase data. Derivatives traders were also buying activities over the last 24 hours, and the total of XRP futures open interest jumped from 2.30% in the past 4 hours and 5.40% in the last 24 hours to $4 billion for XRP coming in. The decision to end the lawsuit is essentially in Judge Torres's hands after the US SEC and Ripple requested a ruling to be happening and an injunction to be removed. The parties have decided to settle the lawsuit, lifting the injunction and reducing the penalties to $50 million. However, the lawyers have expressed concerns that the essentially agreement submitted by Ripple and the US SEC Judge Torres modified the final judgment was essentially the first one they sent was weak, but the second one that they applied was to essentially dissolve this case in general. Notably, the parties mentioned that the settlement, the SEC shift in policy, encrypted policy, had desired to avoid further litigation as exceptional circumstances enough to change Judge Torres' final judgment. This whole XRP and SEC situation is about to come to an end. Hence why there's been this tremendous amount of essentially wallet activity and whale wallet activity, which is always an indication of what's to happen next, which is a rally in one particular crypto project, which is XRP because of this case. Also, we're getting very, very close to rules and regulations for stablecoins. And what was the news that was just recently announced? USDC coming on the XRP ledger. We know for a fact that there are 3 tokens that are going to be accepted. Essentially, we know for a fact that out of these 3 tokens, 2 will be accepted, and 1 is a bit iffy. And those 3 tokens essentially are USDT, USDC, and RLUSD. Stablecoin regulations are coming through right now as we speak. RLUSD essentially is going to be approved, and it was on the documentation, it was on the paperwork for the US government in terms of when they were talking about stablecoins. They were talking about USDT, USDC, and RLUSD. That was the talking points. RLUSD will get approved because it's American guaranteed approval. USDC, American guaranteed approval. USDT, based on El Salvador. That's not going to go down well. And USDT most likely will be rejected the same way as rejected essentially from the EU market space. And also getting rejected from the UK as well because they don't trust USDT soon. But the news that we got recently was USDC is going on the XRP ledger. Ripple's trying to control the entire game. A long time ago, Charles said that everything will eventually operate on the XRP. The XRP ledger is going to become the Google of blockchain. How everything is connected to Google is the same way that how everything is going to be connected to the XRP ledger. As we're getting close to the Genius Act for stablecoin regulations, is the announcement that was made for USDC to go on the XRP ledger also. To add on top of that, Canada approves the first XRP spot ETF, launching in June 2025. Canada has approved its first spot XRP ETF slated for a launch on June 18, 2025 by Purpose Investments. The approval is a pivotal moment for Canadian access to digital assets, potentially boosting regulated crypto investments. Canada has approved its first XRP spot ETF to be issued by Purpose Investments, scheduled to debut on June 18, 2025. This move essentially positions Canada at the forefront of regulated crypto access. Purpose Investments, known for pioneering institutional crypto offerings, secured regulatory approvals from Ontario Securities Commission. This marks essentially their latest venture in digital asset management. The approval is set to enhance access for both institutional and retail investors, potentially increasing market liquidity for XRP. The ETF offers a secure entry point into the volatile digital asset space. This development could influence other markets to follow in suit and further integrating cryptocurrencies within regulated frameworks. Historically, precedent essentially shows how similar moves have sparked market growth. Canada previously also led with a spot Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, paving the way for regular digital asset exchange. These initiatives reflect a growing institutional interest and confidence in regulated crypto investments. Based on past trends, the XRP ETF could boost mainstream adoption and prompt further regulatory approvals globally. As essentially Purpose Investments CEO remarked, "We are excited to lead the way in providing Canadian investors access to XRP through regulated spot ETFs." The CEO of this company that applied for the essential XRP ETF, got approved by Canada's Commission, is excited to introduce XRP to Canadian citizens and Canadian institutions as an ETF. A lot of things are happening for XRP. A lot of announcements have been happening for XRP, you know, Cardano, XRP, RLUSD, USDC, XRP ledger, the case coming to an end. At the exact same time, essentially, the Genius Act is about to be passed. USDC's announcements on that matter. A lot of things are happening. A lot of positiveness is about to be happening inside the crypto space for XRP and for other crypto projects inside the crypto space as well. But XRP is always going to be number one. Now, on that note, we have also come to the endings of tonight's live. This was episode 319 of the CMF Live. And the CMF Live normally airs essentially around 11:30 p.m. London time, but we have changed our time to 10 p.m. from now on London time. So this was episode 319 of the CMF Live. If you watch us for the first time ever, you can tune to this live Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. London time, where I talk about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, and regulations. And as always, everything I say, the disclaimer of this live, not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. And on tonight's live, we talked about essentially Canada's first XRP ETF, with the CEO being ecstatic. We talked about essentially institutions turning bullish on XRP. We talked about wallet activity surging on XRP. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the former ex-CFTC chairman saying XRP and Bitcoin could essentially be federally backed by the US government. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding Cardano integrating XRP and RLUSD to enhance the DeFi operations. We also went through news on tonight's live regarding IBM and Microsoft creating a safe environment in a quantum computing world. We talked about a Singaporean-based company allocating $12 million towards Bitcoin. We talked also about a Swedish healthcare company allocating something towards a Bitcoin treasury. We talked about JP Morgan filing a JPMD trademark for crypto payment services. We also talked about tonight's live regarding El Salvador buying essentially Bitcoin with the money they got from the International Monetary Fund to not buy crypto, but they're buying crypto with it anyways. We also talked about tonight's live regarding Michael Saylor going over to Pakistan to get the government in Pakistan to invest in the Bitcoin. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding Argentina's compliant tokenization framework, and that's something that could be applied to the rest of the world, you could say, all Latin American countries. We also went through news regarding the European market space in terms of ETPs. A lot of things are happening over there. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the crypto project, essentially White Rock, which has turned out to be a scam and linked to ZK Casino. We also went through news on tonight's live regarding Metaplanet reaching 10,000 Bitcoins, their target, and their next target is reaching 210,000 Bitcoins. We also went for news on tonight's live regarding Coinbase being the sponsor of Trump's army parade, which I think was a great idea, but some people criticized it. We also went for news on tonight's live regarding Justin Sun's firm going public on the stock exchange. And other news we went through on tonight's live was regarding Vietnam legalizing essentially cryptocurrencies, establishing rules and regulations for tokenizations and other matters. We went through news regarding Truth Social, essentially markets, Truth Social making a bold move, filing for a Bitcoin Ethereum ETF. News also regarding what's happening in the world in terms of geopolitical tensions. So, those are all the news topics we went through on tonight's live. If you missed it, that was essentially the brief of what we talked about. If you're watching this for the first time, again, this was the CMF Live, stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles. I'm the host of this live. Monday, Friday, you can join this live, where I talk about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, and regulations. Also, thank you so much. I just want to say this for a second. Thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who has liked this live, who has retweeted this live, if you're watching this on X. And thank you so much to everybody from the CMF who's also liked the live. If you're watching this essentially on YouTube, if you haven't done that, CMF members, take 5 seconds to like the live and retweet it so we can help more people inside the crypto space to have a better understanding of what's happening around them. Completely for free, forever. Now, before we simply do go, let's go inside the comment section first. Before we do go, so let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see where we're at. We were at hey, how you doing? So when can we see this bull run take place so it's maximum price up? Very soon is what I could say to you, Johnny. Will this month be up price or still wanting some time? Is this month going to be an up price for essentially? Is this month going to go up in value into the crypto space? Yes, but you've got to understand there's a lot of geopolitical tensions happening also, but also at the same time we're having rules and regulations. So there's so much happening for the crypto space at the same time there's geopolitical tensions going on as well. So the market could be all over the place, but all in all, a positive outcome is on the way. Happy Pisces, good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Good evening, Miles and CMF Money. Good to see you as well. How you doing? How you been? Miles, what does XRP being federal token mean? Does that say it's centralized token now? Every crypto project has essentially attributes to centralization. There's no such thing as decentralization completely in this world. There's no crypto project ever that's going to be fully decentralized. And I know people will say to you, no, Bitcoin is decentralized fully. A factory went down in China and Bitcoin's hash rate dropped 35%. That doesn't scream decentralization, that screams centralization. We live in a world where it's all about control. And the idea of having essentially this decentralized world is just never going to be possible. There's always going to be elements of centralization no matter where you look. Good evening. Let's see where we're at. Hi, Miles and family. Golden Dragon, good to see you. How you been? Good night, Miles, and all of the CMF. Thank you for a great live and news. Let's go, JP. See you tomorrow, brother, same time as usual. Night, Miles and CMF. Pablo, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. 11:30 better time. This top early. Good night, everyone. Great show. Thank you so much, Paul XRP. Good evening and welcome back, Professor Miles. Let's go, funky brother. Thank you, Miles and CMF. See you tomorrow. Great live. Let's go, Mike. See you tomorrow, brother. Sometimes as usual. Free forever. Good night, Miles and CMF. Thanks, Miles, for great news and welcome back. See you tomorrow. Free forever. See you tomorrow. Sometimes as usual. Leave a like, comment, and share for support. Let's go, CMF. Welcome back, Miles. Take care, all. Let's go, Ray. Facts. Share, like, comment, retweet. If you haven't done, like, comment, retweet. Also, if you followed me during this live on X or subscribe to me during this live on YouTube you're watching right now, thank you so much and welcome to the CMF family. Damn boy, we missed you. Let's go, funky brother. Nice time, bro. Thank you, bro. How was your break? You look so fresh. Yeah, it was good. The first week was a bit shambolic on the vacation, but the second week was absolutely amazing. Great news as always. Good night, Miles, and see you tomorrow same time. Artistic, see you tomorrow same time as well. Facts, funky brother. Let's go. What time did you come on? Damn, what did I miss? Oh yeah, if you're watching this right now, CMF members, the CMF Live used to be essentially 11:30 p.m. London time. From now on, the CMF Live is 10 p.m. London time, Monday to Friday, because I did a vote and 10 p.m. won. So I did a vote for 11:30 p.m. or 10 p.m. and I did a poll, and the poll smashed it through with 10 p.m. 95% of people said 10 p.m. is a better time for me essentially to go live for the CMF Live. So from now on, Monday to Friday, the CMF Live is 10 p.m., not 11:30 anymore. So keep that in mind. I'll put essentially an X tweet out as well on that matter. Hey CMF, missed you, Miles. Hope you had a great break. Let's go, comatose. Good to see you as well. Missed you too, brother. So I'll be seeing everybody tomorrow. Same timing as usual, 10 p.m. London time, for episode 320 of the CMF Live. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual. Everybody have a great day or great night, depending on where you're around the world. I'll see everybody tomorrow, same time as usual, for episode 320 of the CMF Live. Like, comment if you already haven't. If you followed and subscribed during this live, welcome to the CMF family. See everybody tomorrow, same time as usual, 10 p.m.